Welcome everyone today. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the keynote, and I love this conference. Love having the opportunity to come and interact with customers and partners and understand what your pain points are, what your needs are. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Wee Sim from Kellogg. So we've been working with Kellogg for quite some time now. And myself, Steve Jones, I'm an SAP solution architect at AWS, focused primarily on SAP solutions and certification type efforts. Wee and I actually kind of go back a ways. We used to work together before, and I was pleased to be able to work with Wee again. So just quickly talk about the agenda. So I'm going to turn it over to Wee first. We're going to talk a little bit about the Kellogg experience, why they chose the platform they did for the solution they needed, and why they chose AWS as the platform for the infrastructure. And then I'll take it back, and we'll talk specifically about the deployment technology of HANA on AWS and how we've tried to automate that as much as possible for you. And then we'll also talk about some additional recommendations around hybrid landscapes while some of the demo that I'm going to attempt live is cooking. So we'll start with that. I'll turn it over to Wee. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. So a quick introduction of Kellogg's company. Basically, we provide ready-to-eat cereal and food products. So some of you are familiar with our brands like Special K, Eggo, Rice Krispies, Pop-Tarts, and of course cornflakes. And as well as our last acquisition 2 years back was with Pringles. So talking a little bit about what drives the motivation to run SAP on HANA. So our sales and marketing organizations is constantly trying to improve margins. So they're constantly trying to improve the performance, doing better promotion planning, looking for more usability of the SAP promotion management systems. And and we are constantly also trying to drive the promotion planning. Currently, we are actually doing week-level planning promotions. They're trying to drive that to day-level planning. So with all this in mind, we decided to implement accelerated trade promotion management running on SAP on HANA. And so this is just an overview of our trade promotion management system. Basically, it's a two-system distributed environment. One's on a CRM, SAP CRM environment, and the other component is a BW environment. Previously, we were running a BW on Oracle, and this shows the new accelerated trade promotion management. It's pretty much the same, a two-system SAP distributed landscape environment. One's on CRM, and the other one basically running on BW or HANA. So just talk a little bit about the scope. We divided the project into two phases. One is to implement BW or HANA. And so the first wave, the project decided that we're going to implement a new BW or HANA instead of migrating existing BW, upgrading our existing BW system to HANA. So basically, we decided to set up a new BW HANA, then install the latest BW at the time, which was 7.31, and then migrate all our existing info objects, queries, reporting, etc., over to the new BW HANA environment. And the second phase will be to implement the accelerated trade promotions. So we decided to implement accelerated trade promotion. So then what's the next step? So we thought about deployment. So at the time, the trend was all about cloud. So we came up with a so-called deployment approach. So we sort of have a cloud-first approach with anything net new that we want to implement. And so it's all about reducing cost, increasing efficiency, automating deployment, quick deployments, cost. And the other thing we tried to also look at was to see how less disruptive at all possible of this new implementation. So that's why we actually leveraged the hybrid approach. Because as you recall, the only thing net new is our BW HANA. So the rest of them is still running on existing environment. So we decided that to be less disruptive, we implement BW HANA net new. So we decided at the time to leverage AWS on HANA. And the other second approach we actually did in terms of hybrid is that to leverage actually non-production, we implement first non-production HANA on AWS before, and then we're keeping existing production on-premise. So this is looking at the application point of view, a hybrid footprint. So if you look on your left of your screen, basically that's the net new BW HANA environment. So we have dev and QA running on AWS. Basically, the HANA cluster is a 2-node, 244 gig. At the time we implemented was a CR1, 8 extra large. And we also deploy our SAP ABAP application server and the BI Java application server together with the HANA in AWS. And this is, as I say, this is actually the BW portion. Remember, there was a CRM portion to form the whole TPM landscape, trade promotion management landscape. So the CRM is still on-premise. So we basically leverage the connection, the VPN connections, and then we have a direct RFC call loading data from our CRM environment to the BW HANA environment. And so this is how our landscape looks like, hybrid landscape looks like. So the dev and QA, we are running on AWS, and the DR system or UAT systems and the production system are running on-premise. So this is just showing only the HANA environment. So when we started out this, we started out HANA on AWS even prior before it was certified to run by SAP. So we started probably sometime October. Kellogg's and AWS, we worked together to basically pilot the first POC running HANA on AWS. So at the time, basically, everything we actually set up from scratch, from BPC to EC tools and all the necessary components, we set up from scratch and install HANA from there. Since then, we keep that as a dev environment. So if you recall, probably sometime last year at this, in fact, at this exact facility, Venetian, in SAP TechEd conference, it was announced by SAP that AWS certified to run on HANA during the last SAP TechEd. So when we set up the QA, basically it was a certified HANA running on AWS. So, and that deployment, we actually make use of what AWS actually did did a lot of automation. So it was all deployed as a CloudFormation template. And then pretty much we set up the 2 HANA node. Since we already have set up everything on the VPC, all the things, we pretty much takes about 30 minutes to set up a 2 HANA node, including a HANA installed. So at the time, the revision was HANA revision 8068. So talking a little bit about some of the challenges, since we are the early adopter of new technology and running HANA on AWS, so there's some challenge that we encounter like any new technology. So the HANA lifecycle management was not, we had to reinstall it, somehow it was not working, and we had to configure some of these trusted secure shell connections over to different nodes. And when we started with this dev and HANA environment at the time, the kernel release at the time was, it's running SUSE Linux. It was running kernel 8080. By the time we did it on the QA system, when it was certified, it was running kernel 93. And then on-premise that we run, our kernel is on a different version as well. So there was some challenge trying to balance these three kernel. We're still trying to work through it, but we are basically keeping all the HANA revision the same. So far it has been working well. And one of the biggest challenge we have when we started out on this part was that we realized the VPN connection between our on-premise and to Amazon, it seems to be always dropping. But over time, I think our network and server folks have figured out that we configured redundant VPN, we did some fine-tuning, and pretty much later I think it was pretty stable since then. So in short, I mean, what we find deploying HANA on AWS is pretty much a fast, effective, and economical and secure environment. And so I'm quickly go to the next one. Okay, just a quick key takeaway. For any new technology, I mean, proof of concept of HANA was very important. So we did that with AWS, so we are very glad about the outcome. And we also engaged with AWS to get the necessary assistance. So if you are doing if you're not familiar with this deploying HANA on AWS, maybe you want to talk to AWS or they get the right AWS partner. And for us, you need to know what's your cloud deployment strategy. So are you going to do your hybrid, all-in, or something else? And then make sure they are aligned with your management. And like anything new, we always have to cater for fallback. So we plan. So as you saw earlier, we actually bought 2 HANA appliances on-premise, one for production and one for DR. So the thought process at the time was that if anything goes south with the HANA implementation at AWS, we will immediately convert one of the existing HANA appliances to run our development system, because that's the very first thing we need to start to get the project going. So I'm glad that we didn't need to do that. And also, you need to have a very dedicated technical team, your Linux team, your server team, your network team to work together, and also engage the project teams. In our case, it's our sales and marketing project teams to implement, to ensure that they are in line with the strategy. So a little bit of our future plan. So we will, for next year, we are planning to upgrade our existing VPN or convert our VPN to a direct connect model. And we also starting to implement more and more SAP non-productions, new SAP implementation in AWS. So in fact, actually, what you're seeing here, BPC and GRC, we already have implemented. It's not a future, it's actually a currently they are running right now. And one of the things when we started out with this our Dev and QA HANA on AWS at the time. So the storage was quite a challenge. Actually, the storage of the HANA per HANA node is 12 EBS storage provision IOPS at 2,000 IOPS per storage. So do your calculation, 12 by 2,000 is 24,000 IOPS. That's for one node. Our one HANA node is a cluster of 2. It's 48,000 IOPS. So it's very, very intense. But over time, I guess SAP and AWS realized that that's somehow overkill. So they actually went back to do testing and recertifications. And as you know, the new AWS rolled out the new GP2 storage. So I believe the new certification is 5 GP2 or 4 GP2 storage per HANA node. So our future plan is planning to migrate those, our 12 EBS provision IOPS storage over to the 4 GP2 storage. So that will definitely highly optimize our costs, monthly costs. as well as we are thinking of doing some POC to see whether using AWS environment to basically do our DR for our HANA environment. So So at this point in time, I will pass over to Steve, which will probably talk a little bit about some of this cost optimization.
Excellent, thank you. We appreciate it. So yeah, let me just speak a little bit to some of the cost optimization. But before I do that, you know, Kellogg has been a great partner. A lot of the learnings that we has talked about, that we went through during this deployment phase, we've put into best practices. And we built into the automated process, which I'll show you today, so that you get the benefit from all the learnings that we've done with Kellogg and other customers. So we mentioned some of the things that we've done. One thing that we really strive to do to AWS is to continuously drop prices. And we knew, you know, when we first went through the certification effort with SAP, there's some very stringent performance requirements for both the compute and the storage layer. And we did a lot of benchmarking, a lot of testing. And the only storage we had at that time that could meet the KPIs that SAP gave us was the provisioned IOP volumes. And it was a very intensive configuration, as Kellogg, as we mentioned. And so what you've seen is that we've continually taken strides to introduce new instance types and new storage offerings to reduce the price of HANA. You can see that this is what's happened over basically a 9-month period. We started with the CR1 instance type, then introduced a new instance type called R3, which not only dropped the price, but also increased performance. So the performance improvement on a single HANA node actually increased by about 20%. Even better than that was the performance we saw in scale-out architectures. So when we use scale-out architectures, there's a lot of communication, inter-node communication, and also, especially for OLAP-type workloads, there's a lot of data transfer. And we saw that we could get up to a 50% performance improvement in scale-out architectures on our R3 instance type. And that was directly due to what Werner talked about this morning around enhanced networking. And enhanced networking basically allows very near bare metal performance for the network layer. And then you can see that with the new EBS GP2 offering for HANA that the price came down significantly. So again, depending on the pricing model you're using, whether it's on demand or some RI model, you can save potentially up to 61% from where we started. And we'll continue to obviously optimize this over time. Let's talk really quickly about the deployment process and the different types of ways to deploy HANA on AWS today. So there are a number of different HANA solutions that are available on the AWS platform, depending on whether you want to develop HANA-based applications, whether you want to run, maybe do some POCs, or whether you want to run the full-blown SAP Business Suite or BW applications like Kellogg is doing on the AWS platform. If you're looking to be you're a developer type and you want to get your hands on HANA to see what in-memory looks like, you can actually go to SAP's Cloud Appliance Library, which is available on saphana.com, and provision a developer instance. You get a free license from SAP, and you just pay the infrastructure charges from AWS. And we're leveraging the smaller M3 instance types, so they're not exorbitantly expensive. And then there's a HANA 1 version. HANA 1 is really interesting. This was SAP's first foray into subscription-based licensing for HANA. So HANA 1 that's available on our marketplace comes with a 99-cent license from SAP per hour. And it follows the same model that we use for infrastructure, which is when you shut down the virtual machine, you stop paying the license fee as well. There are some restrictions with HANA 1. It is restricted to a C3 8 extra large instance type with 60 gig of RAM. So it can be used for POCs, can be used for smaller data mart type scenarios. But if you're looking to leverage it for, say, BW or a Business Suite SAP implementation, that's something that probably isn't going to work. But if you want to do that, then we recommend using what we've put together and we call the Quick Start deployment method. And this is what we alluded to as it's a combination of some scripting, some Python scripting, shell scripting, and a whole bunch of CloudFormation work that we've really put together a fully automated process. And I'm gonna walk through that here in just a moment. Today, and we're looking to optimize this. Today, it consists of a three-step process. You first launch a first CloudFormation template. This creates the virtual private cloud for you, a couple of subnets, in both a public and a private subnet. So we do it in a secure manner. We deploy an RDP instance or an RD gateway instance for you, so you can RDP into this kind of DMZ layer. And we also provide a NAT instance for outbound internet traffic from the private subnet. Step two, actually, since AWS doesn't have, since we don't actually distribute SAP HANA software today, then since you're entitled to actually download the software yourself, we ask you to download the software, tell us where you've put it, and then we actually use that as part of step three to actually provision the SAP HANA environment. Before I go into that, let me talk about step one. So step one, actually, this is what step one creates. It creates the VPC with the public and private subnet, and step three will actually deploy HANA into the private subnet. We create, as I mentioned, an RDP server for you and provide an EBS volume where you're directed to download the SAP HANA software, and then again a NAT instance. So let's dive into this and see what this actually looks like. All right, so let's just go here. If you go to aws.amazon.com/quickstart, you'll see there are a number of what we call quick start reference deployments. And really the intent here is to take complex software architectures or installations and basically provide a one-step process for you to be able to do this, to do these installations or deployments. So we have some for Cloudera, SharePoint, and you'll see here down at the bottom we've got here one for SAP HANA. Now, all of the details, actually more detail than I'm going to go into today, is discussed in this reference deployment guide, along with links to the CloudFormation templates, which you can customize. So if you have specific CIDR blocks that you want to use for your VPC, or basically anything you want to customize within this template, you can. But we're just going to say launch quick start here. This is going to launch me into the CloudFormation console. For those who may not be familiar with CloudFormation, CloudFormation basically allows us to take and design a template that's based on JSON. We call it a stack, and it's basically a collection of resources, AWS resources, that we define, and they can be provisioned in an automated way. So I'm going to actually choose a different region here. Since we're a little bit closer to California, I'm going to choose a region here. And you can see that the S3 template URL is already filled in for you. So these are some of the parameters that we can actually customize. Again, so if you don't want a 10.0 CIDR block, you can customize this. I can imagine that some of you may want to connect this VPC up to your own data center at some point. So you may think ahead and think, okay, I can't have overlapping IP CIDR block ranges. Maybe I should figure out ahead of time what CIDR range I want to use. Then we'll use, actually, we have to input a key name, and this key name is used for SSH access to the HANA nodes, as well as decrypting the administrator password for the Windows instance. And my key is reinvent demo US West 1. The NAT instance type here is important. So we default to a T2 small instance type. Since HANA is in a private subnet, if you're going to be doing a lot of software updates, potentially through the SAP Service Marketplace, having a NAT instance type that may be a little bit larger during that update process could be important, because the network bandwidth is directly tied to the type of virtual machine or instance type that you choose. So since we're a little bit worried about time for the demo today, I'm going to provision a little bit larger one here. And then the other thing that I like to point out is we have a parameter called remote access CIDR. So this is used to build, when we're building security groups, to define which IP address ranges or specific IP addresses are able to RDP into the RDP server that we're deploying and SSH to the NAT instance. So obviously security best practice here would be to not leave this open to anywhere, but to restrict it down to a fine-grained set of IP address ranges. But for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to just go ahead and leave it open. Nice thing about CloudFormation is that it gives you an option to tag the resources that are created. So any resources that get created through a CloudFormation stack will get any tags here. So if you want to assign a particular cost center, you can. And then you can go back and search for this during billing time, chargeback time, those types of things. And then we just go ahead and say create. So here you can see that we have a create that's going on here. We're creating a bunch of there's a lot of different things going on here. If I go to the parameters tab, you can see what I have put in here. So we're going to go ahead and let this cook. Since we were kind of short on time, I actually created one already. And I want to show you steps 2 and 3. So for sake of time, I'm just going to log into an RDP server. So this is just a simple Windows Server 2008, where we've allocated a D drive where you download the SAP software and you extract the software. And so this is actually the SAP software here. And again, it's not glamorous or super sexy. And this is all spelled out in the deployment guide. But we have created a number of PowerShell scripts and templates. I want to point your attention to one here called the custom parameters file. And in this file, you can actually see that we've stored some of the values that were used as part of the template 1 launch. So that when we actually go to kick off template 2, we make sure that there's alignment between what we've previously done and what we're doing with template 2. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off. We're going to kick off this PowerShell template. The first thing we do is we take that D drive offline where you've stored the SAP software, and we take it offline so we can take a snapshot of it. And once we take the snapshot, we're then able to actually use this snapshot. We mount it up to the Linux instances, which are going to be created in step 3, and then we're able to leverage the software there. So here I'm going to choose how many HANA nodes I want. Currently we support anywhere from 1 to 5. You're able to choose here the instance type. So anywhere from C38 extra large to the R38 extra large instance type. I'm going to choose 4. You're able to enter a HANA password here. So this is a master password. This will be used for the HANA system database password, the SID ADM OS password for HANA, and as well as the SAP ADM account. And recommend that you change those after the fact. AWS doesn't have access to these passwords. This is all within your control. So actually in the background, what we've done is we've kicked off template 2. So we'll actually go to the AWS console in a moment and see that. But what you just saw flicker there really quickly, we actually also install the SAP HANA Studio since we have the media available and mounted on this drive. So that's actually all we need this instance for at this point. So let's go back here and take a look at what's going on. And there's a lot going on. So you can see a lot of the parameters here. So we have 5 hosts. We're deploying into availability zone US West 1A. We chose R3 extra large, a number of different things. If we go to events, you can see now we're firing off a lot of different things. So we're creating security groups, IAM profiles for roles for the instances themselves. And these are fine-grained roles that allow access to backup, say, your HANA database to S3. And again, all this is spelled out in the guide, but we've really tried to make this as simple as possible. And then really it becomes a waiting game. I can show you some of the things that are going on, but these are some of the things that you can see are being created in parallel. So why don't we go ahead and let this cook for a little bit, and then we'll come back and take a look at it later. While we do that, I want to talk about some best practices around hybrid architectures. Before I get into that, let's talk about sizing HANA. So again, working diligently with SAP on the certification process. We also worked with them. There are reports that you can run within existing SAP systems that will actually tell you how many SAP HANA nodes you need to deploy on AWS. We always recommend using the quick sizer method, although Anybody who's ever used the quick sizer process, SAP quick sizer process, knows that at the time you're actually going through this process, you may not know everything you need to know about the environment you're deploying. And so that's one of the beautiful things I think about the AWS platform, in that you can kind of do a ballpark sizing estimate, and then you're able to spin down resources and not pay for them, or spin up additional resources if you need them. So let's talk a little bit about hybrid landscapes. So we mentioned the issue with different kernel versions for dev, QA, and then on production, on-premise. So one of the best practices we've seen customers do is to maintain a library of images, both of the SAP software they download, as well as soon as they create a new SAP environment, to immediately take a snapshot or an OMNI of this environment and squirrel it away as a template, if you will, so that if they have additional environments they want to create. Part of the beauty of this whole cloud formation process is that you can actually use systems you've already built as inputs into this process as well. Another interesting thing is that you'll want to think of kind of tier 0 type services if you're operating a VPC that your SAP systems are going to want to use locally, right? So you're not going to want to be resolving DNS across your VPN link. You'll either want to use Route 53 or a local AD server, DNS server in your VPC. We often recommend loosely coupled SAP deployments. So meaning we mentioned that they had a CRM application on-premise and they had BW on AWS, and they were doing some direct RFC calls. Those are going to be super latency sensitive. So it's important if you're going to be doing those types of calls that you do plenty of testing and that you've got the right network in place. So you may need to look at something like Direct Connect if you need to ensure very low latency between tightly coupled systems. But if you're looking at, say a non-production environment and a production environment on-premise, then that's a different story. There's this mechanism whereby SAP customers will migrate changes from downstream systems into production. That's called a transport mechanism. And there's this central transport directory that hosts a bunch of different files that are used for importing these changes into the production environment or other environments. And we recommend creating or configuring separate transport domains. And this is very easy to do, and then using domain links. And then SAP, the systems themselves actually take control of moving the actual files that are needed for those imports. And you don't have to worry about some of the underlying low-level details. Then obviously, we do a lot of benchmarking. We try to have the latest instance types benchmarked and certified by SAP. And so all of the latest instance types, save the one you just heard about today, C4, are certified and benchmarked and supported by SAP. A lot of customers doing disaster recovery on us. Again, in a similar vein, it's important to identify the tier 0 services that are needed in the event of a disaster, right? So you need to go through the whole application portfolio and understand not only your SAP environment, but also the interfacing systems. And then, again, the tier 0 systems, AD, DNS, those types of things that are needed. Because SAP systems are very business critical for business processes. And there could be a lot of systems outside of SAP that are part of the business processes. So it's important to identify those as well. One thing that we recommend, obviously, is to generate SAP system licenses on the AWS side before you have a disaster. You don't want to be worrying about creating your SAP licenses and applying them, running into any issues you might there during a critical DR point in time. Another thing that we also recommend is setting up and testing SAP OSS connectivity. And this connectivity is the connectivity from SAP support systems into your network. And your network in this case, if your DR systems are running on AWS, would be an AWS VPC. And this is completely doable and set up, doable and should be tested beforehand. And obviously test often. Another thing that's is quite important we recommend customers use, we developed something called the AWS Data Provider for SAP. What this does is provide a lot of the monitoring metrics that you would get in CloudWatch at the OS level, and actually metadata from the hypervisor. And we actually surface all this data to a performance agent SAP calls the SAP OS call. And this performance data is then surfaced into SAP transactions where your basis administrators that are often tuning and doing performance troubleshooting within SAP, they're doing it within these transactions. So they can actually see from within an SAP system what their instance ID is, what EBS volumes are in use, network latency, bandwidth, those types of things. And so they don't have to be going to the CloudWatch console or to the operating system. So we try to make it super simple, and this is something that we partnered with SAP on. I mentioned latency, so there's a number of VPC connectivity options. One is a VPN tunnel, IPsec tunnel over the internet, like Kellogg is using today, and then he also mentioned the direct connect option, which allows you to basically lease a line or an MPLS circuit, terminate that on our side, and then have much better latencies and bandwidth. And you can provision 1 gig or even 10 gig connections, or multiples of those. A very simple tool that SAP provides for testing bandwidth, network latency and bandwidth is called NePing. It consists of running a server-side portion and a client portion. You can see here that I'm running the receive side over port 3298, so you'd have to open up the security group to allow that traffic. And then the send side, I'm actually just sending, I'm again specifying the port, and I'm sending a packet in kilobytes and specifying a number of loops here. And you can see that I'm getting about 10 megabytes per second, which is not a whole lot. So to really test, how much can my network link, how much will it take to saturate that, you can actually play with it a little bit and send much larger packets and send more iterations of that. So you can see here I've sent 20 meg packets, and I'm able to push over 100 megabytes per second. So again, just something that you may be able to use and leverage. Let's go ahead and check in and see where things are. My guess is we're probably still waiting. All right, so let's sort here. Okay, so you can see here I've got a master node and 4 worker nodes. They're all up and running. One thing that I'd like to show you real quickly is that we track part of the deployment process through a DynamoDB table. And one way you can actually know where the deployment is actually at is by going to this DynamoDB table and just listing the contents here. So you can see that on our master node, we're actually installing SAP HANA. And there's a pre-install steps that are done on all of the worker nodes. So you could actually, if you didn't want to go down to the operating system, which I'm going to show you some things here in just a moment, you could actually just sit here and watch this table for about 20, 25 minutes until it was done. But since we're a little bit more technical than that, we want to dive into it. So let's go here. I sort here by deployment time to make sure I get the right NAT instance. So as you know, the NAT instance, the HANA instances that we're deploying are only being deployed in a private subnet, so I can't get directly to them. So I'm going to have to tunnel through this NAT instance here. I'm just going to grab this. So now I'm here on this NAT instance, and we're just going to go grab the master node IP address here, the private IP address. So now I'm on the HANA master node. I'm going to sudo root here. I want to show you a couple things. So we keep track of the entire installation process in a directory /root. If you take a quick look here, there's a whole bunch of scripts that we use. I'm not going to go through the whole installation process here, but I'll just kind of outline it in a little bit of detail here. So we start with a vanilla operating system image, a SUSE Linux image, and then we install all of the operating system packages that are necessary for HANA to run. And then we actually take and we attach all of the EBS volumes that are necessary and do it in the SAP supported and configured manner. We configure an LVM2 volume group and logical volumes and format all the file systems for HANA. You can see here that we're still stuck in the installing SAP HANA database phase. But this is where you would go if you wanted to actually tail a log file to see what the installation looked like. So I have actually, just to conclude kind of the demo portion of this, I had previously installed a 5-node cluster. I just wanted to show you what this looks like. I had done this in Oregon. Exact same process, exact same implementation method. I'm just going to fire up HANA Studio, which you remember was installed automatically for us during step 1. And I'm going to add a system. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to grab this IP address. Paste this in. And now I'm connected. And a couple things you can notice here is you can see we're running 5 hosts. We've got just over a terabyte of memory available to us across all 5 nodes. If we go to Landscape tab, we can see all of the worker processes that are available from the HANA cluster. And it's as simple as that. And then at this point, you would take, if you wanted to install, say, BW or Business Suite, you would install another virtual machine and then point that installation to this HANA database. And literally in about 20, 25 minutes, you can have any type of, any size of HANA cluster up and running. So this is a very busy slide, but this is what we just built in a fully automated way. I want to talk a little bit about a pilot program we have available today. If you want to try, say, Business Suite on HANA or BW on HANA, or even just your standard data mart scenario, you can go and sign up for the pilot here and receive up to $1,000 credit. And we did some pricing on this, and this will actually, if you run the solution from basically 40 hours a week and you shut it down at the end of the day, this will fund an entire month of a POC for you. There's a bunch of other collateral and information that we've put together for SAP, not just specifically around HANA, but just SAP workloads in general. There are some subtle nuances to operating SAP systems on the AWS platform. Recommended deployment types for storage volumes and file system layouts, and how do I do backups, those types of things. So I would recommend you go here. And before I close, I would just remind you that there is another SAP on AWS session today at 5:30. It's a general SAP on AWS overview where one of my colleagues, Frank Steinhans, and Bill Tim will be presenting that. I would encourage you to go to that. With that, I thank you for attending, and have a great rest of the show.